Welcome back. I'm Barry Craig. My guest today normally is behind the camera, but he recently grabbed headlines in the Louisville Courier-Journal as the inventor of two of the loudest warning whistles in the world. He is Richard Weisenberger. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
How in the world did you invent the two loudest whistles in the world, and why did you do it?
I guess it was a lot of things. Back in 1974, some really bad tornadoes came through Kentucky. I was living in the greater Cincinnati area at the time. It tore up a lot of stuff. And they always said, and like they still say today, nobody hears the warning sirens very well. So I thought something needed to be done about that. But also at the time I was working on a big theater pipe organ. It was the Wurlitzer 260 Special. It was a 19-rank Wurlitzer, and it was in the RK Albee Theater. And they were
that was in Cincinnati?
In Cincinnati.
And that's sort of a historic old theater, isn't it?
Yes. In fact, they still have the facade of that theater on the convention center in Cincinnati.
And that, I'm sure, back in those days, organs were used for silent movies
Yes.
and also vaudeville.
Yes.
So this organ would have gone back how far?
Oh, 1926 or 7, something like that.
So then you're restoring this organ.
Right, me and about 10 other people.
Mm-hmm. And that gives you the idea to see if you can't make something louder than an organ?
Not really. I started out building replicas of Wurlitzer pipework, but being an engineer, I was curious. I thought, what would happen if you changed the height of the mouth on the pipe? They call it the cut-up. And I would measure what pressure was needed to fully blow the pipe and also the decibel output of the pipe at a fixed distance. And I found out there was a big correlation between that. Every time you would double the cut-up, you would get 4 times, actually 16 times the output.
Now explain in layman's terms what that means.
A lot louder. If you doubled the height of the mouth on a pipe, the pipe is a whole lot louder. In fact, one pipe is as loud as 16 pipes if you double the cut-up.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. Then what happens from there?
Well, then I started taking that farther, and finally I got into building things that resembled old-time steam whistles. And I ended up building one for my car that was a full 20 dBs louder than the horn.
Now that means decibels.
Decibels.
Yeah. So you had a steam whistle on your automobile?
It operated off the exhaust, but the old exhaust whistles that you usually hear were wimpy. This thing actually sounded like a steam whistle.
Well, how did you do that? How did you hook that up to your car?
I had an exhaust cut out from J.C. Whitney, so I hooked up to the
Oh,
exhaust.
heavens, yes.
And I'd pull out that little thing and slam down the accelerator and woo! Yeah.
The exhaust cutout. I hadn't
Yeah.
thought of that. J.C. Whitney. My
Yeah,
goodness,
yeah.
that's a trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
So normally you put an exhaust cutout on there to make your engine sound loud. You could take the
Well,
cap off.
I did it after the muffler. I just had it on there to blow my whistle.
Wow.
And that whistle, like
Never
I say,
heard of that.
it was louder than 20 decibels, which is 100 times the power of the car's horn. And I used to blow at trains. They'd blow back at me and everything else.
I'm sure that surprised the engineer when you did that.
I'm sure it did. They didn't
Yeah.
expect to sound like that from a car.
Wow. 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 So you moved to Paducah to
85.
go to work as an engineer here at the studio.
Actually, I was an instructor over at IET at the time, but I
okay.
came here to the college in '89, December of '89.
Now, these two whistles that you invented them when?
The patents date '84 and '87. Now, the one I call ultra whistle is what I call a Type 1 toroidal whistle.
Now, explain that to those of us who don't know what this means.
Okay. It's a ring-shaped, all whistles from the 1800s on have been basically cylinders.
Mhm.
They're cylinders that are blown, and they look like the old-time whistles on trains and riverboats and things like that.
Factories.
Right,
Yeah.
factories.
Mhm.
And in fact, very much like the one that you hear on your other show, Union Label.
Yes, exactly. Sure.
That type of whistle.
Sure.
What I did is built it in a toroidal shape chamber, which effectively coupled the area of 28 of those type of whistles together, and it did it in a way that the phase wouldn't get out. Instead of having 28 separate whistles, which would all be going in different phases and wouldn't be additive, the single toroidal chamber, or ring-shaped chamber, made it all additive, and I got 28 times the output of a single whistle.
So this thing is in the shape of a ring.
It's basically looks like an automobile tire. You'll see it on a roll-in later.
Okay,
But
sure,
yes.
sure. Did you have any background for this? This sounds like acoustical engineering and
It
sound
is.
engineering.
I had an old book I got. It was Acoustical Engineering by Harry F. Olson, Ph.D., P.E., 1957. It was published by Van Nostrand. And I got a lot of information from that. And of course, being an engineer, a lot of this stuff translated directly from electronics. You wouldn't think there was so much that would translate from electronics to acoustics, but there are. In fact, even antenna design figures into this.
Well, the article by Byron Crawford, the well-known Courier Journal columnist, he apparently called you because of the, well, he interviewed you several years ago.
Quite a few years ago.
And you had read in the Evansville papers that the sirens for these latest tornadoes, you
Yes.
couldn't hear them indoors.
Yes.
And I guess that sort of jogged his memory that you had a whistle that you could hear
Yes.
anywhere.
Yes.
Tell us about the range of these whistles.
Okay, the sirens that they use now for warning, the most popular sirens are the Federal, they used to call them Federal Signal. I think they just dropped the signal part. It's Federal, it used to be Thunderbolt to 1000 series, 1001, 1002, 1003. That was a type of siren where you had a large rotary blower at the bottom. It went up a 3-inch pipe to the chopper head. That's a thing that actually chops the air to the horn, then the horn rotated. Well, those were a very popular siren. And
They sound similar to air raid sirens. in
those are
World
the
War
kind of
II.
sirens that, in fact, that's the very siren they got on top of Lourdes Hospital.
Mhm.
And they have a 70 dB radius of 1.3 miles.
Well, again, they sort of sound like you see the films of the London Blitz. Those
Yeah, that's
sound
exactly
very
what they
similar to
sound
what
like.
they sound like.
Yes.
So they go in a circle, because I've seen them operate.
Right, they're directional.
Right. And you can hear them for how far?
They got a 1.3 radius for 70 dBs. Of course, it goes out a lot farther than that, but that's how loud it needs to be by FEMA to be effective as a warning signal. 70 decibels is what FEMA
Now,
says.
compare and contrast the Ultra and the Dyna whistle
Okay.
to that.
The Ultra whistle that I tested at the Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International Airport back in July '82, it produced a 70 dB radius of 2.5 miles. In fact, it was audible inside a moving car with the windows up at 2 miles. And a friend of mine in Delhi, Ohio, which was a full 5 miles by the map away from the test site, he heard it. He said it sounded like it was right in Delhi, Ohio. It sounded like a factory whistle. And he said there's no factory whistles anywhere around that you
Wow.
can hear.
Well, what makes your whistle so much louder than this siren on top of the hospital here?
It isn't actually so much louder. It carries a lot better. Now, the siren on top of the hospital chops air, and in doing so, it produces basically a square wave or a modified square wave. And it has a lot of upper harmonics. Now, these upper harmonics sound very harsh and very loud up close, but high-frequency energy doesn't carry that far. There's a thing called the inverse square law, which says that every time you double the distance from the source, it's only 1/4 as powerful as from the previous distance, or you lose 6 decibels every time you double the distance. Well, in addition to that, there's something called atmospheric absorption, which is frequency dependent, and higher frequencies fall off a lot faster. There's a thing like at about 500 hertz or something, you're going to lose a decibel per every 1,000 feet. Now, that decibel per every 1,000 feet at 500 hertz is added to the loss of the inverse square law. And if it was 1,000 hertz, it would be much higher. Well, if it's lower, it'd be lower. Well, the frequency of my whistle was around 430 hertz. The frequency of those sirens is around 700. So that helped it right off. That helped it carry farther right off because there wasn't so much loss from the atmospheric absorption. Also, the tone was a lot purer, which means there wasn't a lot of energy wasted in upper harmonics. So actually, it sounded easier on the ears up close than those sirens do, but it carried a lot farther. And that's why I had the 70 dB radius of 2.5 miles at a frequency of about 430.
Before we went on the program, you mentioned that you had demonstrated one of these whistles for the Kentucky DES people at Big Bone Lick State Park.
Right.
How did that go?
It went okay. I guess I wasn't that prepared to do it. It was sort of thrown together that time. When we did it at the airport, I had Angelo Campanella fly in. He's not only a well-known acoustical engineer, he's also a pilot. So he flew in himself and spent a couple days up there. We tested the whistle in July of '82.
Mm-hmm.
He brought thousands of dollars worth of his own equipment. He had sound level recorders, sound level meters, third octave band type, and everything else. So we did a thorough test.
Mm-hmm. Now, do we have some video of that?
Yes, we do. It'll come up later. I think the first video is actually on the organ.
Okay. Let's talk about the organ.
Yes.
To go back to that, tell us about the organ.
That organ, the organ actually didn't start out as an organ. It started out as a big thing of pan pipes. It's the wooden pipes that you see there. And
Now, is that what a pan flute is?
Not exactly.
Oh.
Mine was more like organ pipes,
Okay.
but you could play it like that.
Okay.
And just the wooden part I could play like that. Then I got the idea, well, why not make an entire little organ out of it? So I did. I got a power supply that you can see there. It powers the solenoid valves. And
this organ is on display where now?
it's on display right now at the KCTCS Juried Art exhibit up in our theater lobby. It's on display, well, I won't say when, but
Mm-hmm.
currently on display. And there's a pressure regulator. When the pressure comes in from the blower, that keeps it constant whether you got a slight demand on it or if you're holding down big chords. That is the tremolant. That jiggles the air supply. You can see the regulator filling up with air and the tremolant doing it now. So that gives the sound a warbling
Right,
sound. Yes.
right.
Like you used to hear on the big old theater pipe organs.
Exactly.
Yes.
The mighty Wurlitzer.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And that came, I believe you told me, from a...
That was an old phonograph motor that I used an eccentric on to do it. I was just making this thing out of spare parts. The pipes were actually made out of orange crate carton wood, and the little metal pipes that I put on when I built the organ, they're down at the right end of the wooden pipes. They're made out of 3/8-inch copper tubing.
Do you have to have special wood to make the pipes? Some wood better than others?
Not really. As long as it's durable and doesn't crack and things like that. That's basically what.
And the name of the organ was?
I called it the Weisenberger tibia phone.
The tibia.
There you can see those little pipes right now,
Yeah.
those little metal pipes.
Well, we think of the tibia as a bone in the human body. Is that related at all to?
Well, maybe back in the caveman days, somebody was blowing on bones, and the tibia on the theater pipe organ is well known. It's a basic foundational stop on the theater pipe organ.
Yeah.
And it comes in two types. There's the tibia clausa and the tibia plana. The tibia clausa are the big stoppered pipes. It's tuned by putting a stopper in the top, and you adjust it up and down until the pipe's in tune. Of course, it stays there. Tibia plana, you have to either cut down something in the back or have something to build it up. That's the way it tunes. It's open. And I chose the tibia plana as the open flutes, basically, large-scale flutes.
So we're going to be looking here shortly at the...
Yeah, we'll look at a video of the pipe organ. It's a video that was made at WCPO TV in Cincinnati back in '81, so I'm going to look about 24 years younger.
Well, I would like to look 24 years younger if that's possible, but that would be too much magic for TV land. You play the organ yourself?
I'm a lousy organist.
Really? You're
Yeah.
just an inventor of organs, not a player of organs?
Yes.
Who plays your organ?
I've had Gaylord Carter actually come out and play it. He was the organist, was known for the old Amos and Andy radio show.
Really?
He has actually seen it and played it. He said, man, this little thing is, he said, what did he say? He said, sweet. That's what he said. And it was very loud, though. He said, man, he said it was loud.
Where
but it was
did you
sweet.
cross paths with him?
Through being on the Emery restoration team, the Emery Wurlitzer restoration team, and he did the dedication concert back in 81, I guess, 80 or 81. And then I invited him out to my house, and he came out there and played my little organ.
That's terrific.
Yes.
That's great. What do you plan to do with the organ after the display?
After the display, I guess I'm going to leave it here for a while so that it could be used in Norman's classes. He can have some use for it.
Norman Wergler, who's our music teacher.
Right. And I talked to him just the other day about possibly using it on shows. Todd Birdsong mentioned that. He's the theater technical director. And I thought it sounded like a good idea. I mentioned it to Norman. He thought it did too, using it for certain theatrical productions.
Well, that's terrific. Maybe a concert or something featuring the handmade organ.
Something.
And not just every school would have a handmade organ.
Not a handmade pipe organ.
Absolutely, absolutely. Going back to the whistles, you would like to see the DES people adopt these.
I would like to. It would be good for everybody, really, because one of these units would replace, one like you're going to see on the video, would replace about 3 on the roof of Lourdes. And then I got a patent on one that's inverted and horn loaded. It actually uses 25% less air to blow, and because of the horn loading, it's a full 10 dBs louder, or 10 times the output on axis. So instead of having a 70 dB radius of 2.5 miles, it would have a 70 dB radius of 4 miles, which was the 60 dB radius of the prototype.
Would there be a cost saving involved too?
Yes, immense. Actually, when you say the price of one of these complete units with the blower and means to rotate it and everything like that, it'd probably be about $100,000. Present siren sell for $20,000, $25,000 each. But when you think it might be replacing up to 9 of them, it's a savings. It's definitely a savings.
Now these things would then be operated by electricity?
It would be operated by electricity, possibly diesel generator backup if the electricity should fail. Yes.
Now, this thing emits a steady
tone.
Whereas sirens sort of, they kind of
go up and down.
Yeah.
This thing, you'll hear it on the video, but yeah, it emitted about a 430 hertz tone, and it's a much purer tone than sirens produce, so it would carry farther.
And we talked before the program.
Tape recording I took on the 30th of July, 1982. The tape recorder was a small handheld personal dictating tape recorder by General Electric. It has a fairly good frequency response. I don't know what its exact figures are, but it probably cuts on at about 100 hertz and goes up to maybe 5K. And it has a very effective AGC, which in a way reduces the quantitative aspect of the data, but gives us a good qualitative look at the sound level, both while it was fully on and when it went off. You could hear the echoes from the landscape about the airport test site. I don't know what the reflectors were, but there's about 2 or 3 of them there that are evident just as just after the sound is shut down. Oh, by the way, I'm Ange Campanella, and this was done by AccuLab. Also, after shutdown, you can hear the diesel generator running. In the whole record lasts about less than 5 minutes. The first part, the whistle was already on when I turned my tape recorder on. We were standing at a distance of 500 feet from the unit, so that the whistle was the most evident sound, and then the echoes. And then finally the diesel generator.
Interesting. I was struck by the diesel. The engine looked like something off a bulldozer.
It was a 360 kilowatt Caterpillar generator we rented. It was $1,000 a day for the rental.
And you mentioned while we were watching that had that thing gone off when he was there, it probably would have killed him.
Yeah, it probably would have at that distance. It would have been about 155 decibels where he was shown standing from it.
Wow. Well, the sound was interesting. I was trying to compare it to something. It sort of sounded like one of the old-fashioned railroad whistles, only a lot longer. Sort of a throaty sound.
Yeah, that's basically what it sounds like.
Rather than you think of a whistle being rather shrill.
This is not shrill.
Yeah, Yeah.
And it's a sound that really penetrates. It goes right through walls. It doesn't fall off fast with distance. It's closer to the inverse square law than this added
Well,
on.
how is your whistle able to penetrate walls, whereas these sirens don't?
The upper frequencies don't penetrate structures very well. This thing is, most of its power is concentrated right around 430 hertz, so that's why it does it. That's why it travels so far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you've ever noticed from a distance, a lot of sirens, when they go down, if you're at a distance, the downward side of the siren actually carries better than when it's fully up. Actually, the siren is louder when it's fully up, but it still carries better. Well, this thing starts out very loud even when it's at that lower frequency, so it carries like crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you did get a buyer for this, you would go into production?
Definitely. In fact, my business partner is a former head of DES for the state of Kentucky. It's James Everett.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the head of DES for the state of Kentucky for several years.
Mm-hmm. Well, since the Courier-Journal article came out, have you gotten any inquiries or any bites on this yet?
Not really.
Yeah. So, well, who knows? Maybe this program will lead to lead to something. Anything else you're going to invent? I mean, anything on the drawing board? Inventions?
Not right at the present. It's the ultra whistle that you saw, and then the louder dyna whistle that's horn loaded. I did have a patent way back in 1974 on an amplifier designed for an automobile, for car stereos.
For car stereos?
But it never went through. There was Radio Shack was interested in it for a while, and they found out they could get something cheaper from Japan, so they didn't go with it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any more video, or is that?
There's another video, the pipe organ, the one from WCPO TV.
Okay, we'll watch the pipe organ as well. Again, just the referring to the story, toward the end of it, he interviewed Steve Oglesby of the Kentucky Division of Emergency Management. He says a siren, number one, is designed to alert people who are outside that there is impending emergency, and is not designed to alert people in their homes, in the grocery store, or in the businesses. It is designed to let people who are outside know they need to go find out what's going on.
Well, that's where I figured they need something that will reach them inside.
I was going to say that's kind of an odd concept,
Yes.
because if I'm inside a building and a tornado's coming, I would like to know that.
Yes.
And so that quote struck me as
there was something odd here
odd.
I might mention. When we tested it at Big Bone State Park, one of the people who were at the test, they went down about 2 miles down the road and were starting to randomly question people in their homes. They said they heard it. They thought it was a test tone on their TV, and they said there's a siren a lot closer than that. They can't hear it that well.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they heard this thing, didn't have any idea what it was. Then they found out it was coming from outside.
Mm-hmm. Now, for those wanting more information about the stuff you do, there are some websites you can refer them to.
Several websites, yes.
And here are the websites. And here is the video from Cincinnati TV on the organ.
It may be a pipe dream, but a young man from Erlanger who is among the foremost authorities on pipe organs thinks the old instruments can make a comeback in this scientific age.
I really think it needs a good boost from science. I think that's the kicker it needs, and once it gets out, once people can understand it on a scientific level, they'll probably get back to it.
31-year-old Rick Weisenberger is an electronic engineer at Northern Kentucky University. He also is a big pipe organ fan, though he admits he's no musician. Rick got turned on to pipes at age 18 and built his own model 6 years ago. It's all a matter of math, not music, he says.
The way I design my pipes, the cut-ups, that's how high the mouth is on the pipes. They all reduce by equal amounts, and the height of the pipes reduced by equal amounts, and the width of the pipes, in my case, reduced by equal amounts.
To help him make the pipes from orange crate cartons and other non-glamorous materials, Rick makes use of an oscilloscope. Exhibit A.
checking sound levels, instantaneous peak levels, and also waveform differences.
It's this kind of expertise that Rick writes about regularly in Theater Organ Magazine, a publication that reaches some 6,000 pipe people nationwide.
I'm writing for anybody that can understand technical aspects of organ building. And I write in terms of decibels and distances from sources and things like that, and how to keep a whole rank of pipes even in output within a few dBs and things like that.
Though Rick may know the mechanics of pipe organs, he bows to another tri-state enthusiast when it comes to playing the instrument. Jim Dickman, who also built a pipe organ from scratch and drain spouts 4 years ago, is an accomplished musician on any pipe organ.
I only got 36 pipes in this organ. That's 3 octaves without the high C. And basically I just designed one pipe and scaled it down by the 12th root of 2 and just kept working from there. The pipes are made of wood, and the first 2 octaves of pipes, that is, and the last octave is made of metal. It's actually copper tubing. The wind comes in from the blower. It goes through a regulator, and the pressure is kept constant no matter if you're putting a large demand on it or just playing a single pipe. And the pressure being constant keeps the thing in tune, hopefully anyway. And then the valves are worked electrically. Like when you press a key, it completes a circuit and pulls down a solenoid and opens the valve. That's basically how it works.
Weisenberger would like to see the day when pipe organs are back in sports stadiums and theaters again. And he doesn't think that's just a pipe organ dream.
I think people have to be exposed to it, really. And if you get some organs that, let's say you got some punch there, you put out a few decibels and it'll get them back.
It does sound like a calliope.
It does. It sounds like a calliope, and he mentioned if anyone ever heard a pipe organ that they would instantly become fans of it. I think anyone that's been over to the Emory Theater and heard that theater pipe organ knows what he's talking about. The sound is fabulous.
Coincidentally, when they were working on the organ, the theater organ over at the Emory, Rick Weisenberger was instrumental in that work because he is one of the foremost experts at a very young age on pipe organs.
But he's a mathematician, and he's not even a musician.
All math, not music, math. Just scales them down. 7 o'clock report. We'll scale right along here right after this timeout.
Very interesting. And unfortunately, we're out of time. Thanks for being with us today. And next time we see you, you'll be back in the control room, I guess.
Definitely. I'll be running the audio next time.
I'm Barry Craig. My guest today was Rick Weisenberger. We'll see you next time.